I eagerly started my 10th week with an easy stretch into Springfield, Missouri. For the first time since Poplar Bluff, I had a predominantly downhill ride. On top of that, I had a host in Springfield that was gracious enough to let me spend 2 nights to rest for a day. It was an incredibly easy day, especially with the last few days of hills fresh on my mind. I made it to the outskirts of the city, where I was able to get onto the Galloway Creek Greenway, which I lazily cycled for about 7 miles into the city. From there, it was a short ride to my host's home. My host actually put me up in his spare home that he rents out on Airbnb. As it happened, I was in the area on the only 2 nights that the home was unoccupied that month, so I really lucked out. I spent a relaxing day indoors, enjoying being off the road and watching the rain pass on by. The next morning, I left Springfield and continued on west. To my frustration, I was having a tough time of it that day. My legs felt fatigued from the beginning, and the spike in humidity that day was making it difficult to breathe. But I managed and eventually found my way onto Route 66. There were plenty of ups and downs, but nothing quite like the ones I had gone over the past week. After a long day on the bike, I finally found my way to Webb City, my last stop in Missouri. On Thursday, I made my way out of Missouri, first snagging the corner of Kansas on my way down into Oklahoma. I kept on Route 66 for most of the day. With less hills and significantly cooler out, it was a much nicer ride than the day before. I was able to follow the old highway down to Vinita, Oklahoma, where I was fortunate enough to have a host for the night. After a great breakfast, I got back onto 66 down to Tulsa. I was having mixed feelings about the highway, as some parts of it were really great, and others left much to be desired. A little ways outside the city, I stopped by the Blue Whale of Tulsa, a roadside attraction from the 70s. From there, I made it into Tulsa and found my way to my host's house. He informed me that I had arrived at the beginning of the Tulsa Tough, an annual 3-day cycling event in the city. Later that evening, I went downtown and caught the last 2 races. It was pretty awesome to see all the cyclists, and I had a lot of fun watching them fly by. I stayed till the end before heading back for the night. I left Tulsa the following morning and got onto the K Trail out of the city. Not too far out, I met a fellow cyclist and had a great time talking about my travels as well as his future bike touring plans. Further down the trail, we swung by the fire station and I got to meet a couple of his coworkers. After talking for a bit, I left with well wishes and got back on the trail. We parted ways in Sand Springs, and just as I set out, I hit a pothole and something broke. I wanted more than anything to be able to continue onward, but the rear wheel was out of whack, so I very reluctantly turned around and rode back into downtown Tulsa. Once at a bike shop, I learned that I had broken a spoke. In addition to the spoke, I got a new chain, rear cassette, and handlebar grips. With the new parts and everything tuned up, I felt like I was riding a new bike as I set back out on the trail. Because of the lost time, I knew that I was in for a late day on the road. Once I reached my destination of Stroud, Oklahoma, I wasn't satisfied with my spot, so I decided to get back on the road to the next town. I raced the 8 miles in the waning light and didn't get into Davenport until sometime after 9, where I was able to find a man still outside and asked to camp out in his yard for the night. Thankfully, he said yes. The next morning, I got on the road to Oklahoma City. I only got 5.5 miles before stopping to get out of the way of an oncoming storm. My host sent me pictures of her street, underwater in the flash floods throughout the city, 50 miles away. After waiting a couple hours, I finally got back on the road and followed Route 66 to the outskirts of the city. From there, I was able to follow my host's directions that got me off the busier streets on my way to her home. Another cyclist was coming in from the west, and once he arrived, we were treated to a great meal and great conversation. I had a lot of fun, and our host even took us out for ice cream to top off the night. I finished up my 10th week in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.